Welcome to Rabbit Room Apologetics. These episodes explore biblical theology from a Hebraic and Second Temple period perspective. For the full written article with all references and footnotes, please see the link in the show notes. The problem of the flattened text. Hello. Today we explore the problem of the flattened text. Silent reading of the biblical text on a printed page can eliminate the performative, oral, and embodied dimensions that originally characterized its transmission and theological impact. It is a common misconception that the earliest Christians engaged with Scripture in the same manner as contemporary readers, quietly studying bound books in private settings. This assumption requires careful reconsideration. In the ancient Mediterranean context, literacy rates were extremely low. In first-century Galilee and Judea, overall literacy likely fell below 5%, with even lower rates among women and rural populations. Most individuals encountered the ethical teachings of the Torah and the eschatological promises of the prophets exclusively through oral delivery, dramatic, embodied, and communal experiences. For much of biblical history, theological tradition was transmitted orally. Teachers handed down sayings, hymns, and parables to their disciples through active vocalization, gesture, and communal memorization. Ancient recitations were dramatic, highly engaging, and intensely emotional events. This is essential to understanding how Jesus of Nazareth's words first landed with their original force, Jesus as a master orator. Jesus utilized Koine Greek as his primary language of public teaching and rhetorical expression to communicate his unified biblical narrative to a highly diverse, multilingual audience. The Greek text of the New Testament gives us direct access to the phrasing, rhetorical artistry, and theological accuracy that Jesus employed in his public ministry. Jesus was raised in Nazareth, a village situated within the region known as Galilee of the Gentiles. His proximity to international trade routes and Hellenistic cities exposed him to diverse linguistic influences. The Gospels depict Jesus conversing directly with a Roman centurion, a Syrophoenician woman, and Pontius Pilate, with no mention of an interpreter. This suggests fluency in Greek for public discourse with heterogeneous audiences. When Jesus delivered the Sermon on the Mount, his audience included people from Galilee, Jerusalem, Judea, and the Decapolis, a league of 10 Hellenized cities where Greek was the primary language of public life. By teaching in Greek, Jesus ensured his message of eschatological hope would freely cross cultural borders. The strategic dissonance of the opening blessings. The Beatitudes functioned as an authoritative preamble that intentionally shocked the listening audience by directly inverting their culturally established values. Jesus ascended the mountain, gathered his disciples, and sat down. In ancient Jewish instruction, a rabbi sitting down to teach signaled official, highly authoritative doctrine. His opening words delivered a massive cognitive shock. Jesus began with the Greek word Makarios, usually translated as blessed or happy. In classical Greek literature, this word described the transcendent state of the immortal gods, a state of divine existence insulated from poverty, disease, and death. By proclaiming this divine state of flourishing upon the lowest and most vulnerable members of human society, Jesus deployed intense cognitive dissonance. He forced his audience to reset their understanding of human happiness. Rhetorical structure of the first Beatitude. The exact Greek text of Matthew chapter 5 verse 3 reads, Makarios hoi Ptochoi to pneumati, hoti auton estin he basileia ton uranon. Modern English Bibles translate this as, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The Greek word translated as poor is Ptochoi. This describes completely destitute beggars who exist in a state of absolute dependence, people reduced to the margins, invisible to polite society. Announcing that starving, disabled beggars were the recipients of divine prosperity was an absurd, topsy-turvy contradiction. The crowd would have gasped or laughed in disbelief. Imagine Jesus declaring, Fortunate are the destitute beggars, followed by a deliberate pause. This silence allowed confusion and offense to ripple through the audience. He then provided resolution with the phrase, in spirit, to pneumati. The term pneuma signifies both spirit and breath or wind. This wordplay emphasizes complete dependence on the Creator. Genuine flourishing requires acknowledgement of one's spiritual destitution before God. The pronouncement of mourning. Immediately following, Jesus delivered Matthew chapter 5, verse 4, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." This blessing utilized sophisticated Greek alliteration. The first four Beatitudes all begin with the Greek letter pi, Ptochoi, the poor, Penthounce, those who mourn, praise, the meek, and Peinontes, those who hunger. This phonetic linking binds these countercultural values together in the listener's mind. Rhyming verb endings create a rhythmic cadence for memorization. The promised blessings end with similar-sounding suffixes such as paraklethesantai, they will be comforted. The theological message reinforces the paradox. Those who mourn grieve the injustice in the world and their own shortcomings in fulfilling the ethical demands of the Torah. They grieve their inability to fully love God and neighbor. The text employs a divine passive. God himself is the one who comforts. God seeks a broken and contrite heart that depends entirely on divine grace. Broader sermon and application today. The same oral artistry pervades the entire Sermon on the Mount. Consider the 6 antitheses of Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 48. You have heard that it was said to those of old, but I say to you. This formula builds dramatic contrast. The metaphors of salt and light in Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16, and the Lord's Prayer in Matthew chapter 6, verses 9 through 13, are vivid and suited for oral delivery. The overall architecture of Matthew chapters 5 through 7 reflects oral design, chiastic patterns, and inclusios that aid memorization and performance. The problem of the flattened text has profound consequences today. Silent reading can domesticate the Beatitudes into personal moral advice. The oral Jesus delivered a public, communal, and subversive proclamation. The kingdom belongs to those who have nothing to offer, beggars, mourners, the meek, the hungry. Recovering the oral dimension changes how we approach Scripture in community. Reading the Beatitudes aloud, with pauses, volume changes, and gestures, allows the rhetorical devices to work again. Conclusion. Jesus of Nazareth was a master orator whose words were never meant to lie flat on a page. The Beatitudes are the opening declaration of a kingdom that belongs to the destitute, the grieving, and the desperate. The Greek text, with its alliteration, wordplay, and cultural resonances, gives us access to that living voice. The solution is not to abandon the printed Bible, but to read it with new ears. Imagine the hillside, the crowd, the pause after, "Fortunate are the destitute beggars." Hear the alliteration linking the poor, the mourning, the meek, and the hungry. Feel the cognitive dissonance of blessing the very people society has discarded. Then ask yourself, which group in that ancient audience do I most resemble? And am I willing to let Jesus' upside-down kingdom reorient my life, my values, and my perception of what it signifies to be genuinely blessed? Thank you for listening. May the living voice of Scripture speak to us anew. Thank you for listening. If this teaching has been valuable, I encourage you to read the full article on Substack. The complete text, along with all supporting references and footnotes, is available through the link in the show notes.